Welcome back, folks, to our draft prospect coverage with our very own John Vogel. We have one more person to take a look at, another receiver. Some might argue one of the better receivers in the draft, maybe the best. We're going to get into it, of course. Sammy, start us up.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Talking Titans.
Levis towards the end zone. Got a man. Touchdown. Wow. And it's the fourth TD pass of the day in the debut of Will Levis.
The sickest Tennessee Titans podcast. Sick! It's going to be sick.
Welcome back, folks. We have one more prospect to go over, a receiver who finished his career at LSU with over 3,000 yards. I'm talking about one Malik Nabers. Now, John, we've had a guy by the name of Malik we drafted a few years back. Didn't work out too well. If we wind up taking this Malik, we're obviously going to be hoping for a better outcome. Now, John, I've always been one who's sided with having more size and weight at the receiver position rather than more along the speed line. Now, mind you, in this day and age, speed's going to kill in the NFL, especially on the offensive side. We know the speed's there, but I personally think Nabers is a little undersized for what I'm looking for in this Titans offense in 2024. 6 feet, 200 pounds. With all that being said, though, what are you getting when you insert Malik Nabers into any offense in this NFL?
You know, we used to talk about wide receivers being X's and Z's, right? And the league has kind of gotten away from that. Now we talk about them as ones and twos. You have a number one who's more of a dominant guy that can win just about any matchup. That's your one. You got a two. And Malik is kind of that two, you know, where he played a lot out of the slot last year at LSU and was very, very good at it. But he can move around. He can do a bunch of different things, you know, from both the outside and the slot. Yeah, the size I can see is a little bit concerning. We don't actually have, you know, this guy hasn't measured yet. As of recording time, he's not going to measure until he gets to his pro day on the 27th. So I'm thinking he's 6 foot, maybe. We're going to find out.
Might be a little less.
188. He might be a little less, right? So it's like we're going to figure that out on his pro day. He didn't measure in at the combine. He opted out of that along with Jaden Daniels, his quarterback at LSU. So we don't really know exactly where he is, but from what we can tell, he's about 6 foot, probably right there in that 185, 190 range, and we'll know for sure this week. But he's a really awesome route runner. That's the first thing that makes him stand out. He's awesome getting off his release, getting deep down the field. He's an excellent run after catch weapon. And if you look at the wide receivers in the NFL right now, one of the top things that teams want in general is run after catch ability, especially in these West Coast offenses, because we're going to scheme these guys, you know, into space, get them the ball, make it as easy as we can for the quarterback to get it there. And let these guys go cook, become running backs in the open field. And that's really what Nabers kind of becomes. He's a scat back in the open field. So you get him into space, he can do that. He can win in just about any matchup. He's got good hands. I thought he kind of struggled through traffic a little bit, you know, so when he's in a contested catch situation, he's going to struggle a little bit more. But the good thing is you didn't see him in those contested catches situations very often because he's just so good as a route runner, creating that separation and getting those opportunities to get the ball. So from a schematic standpoint, I think there's a lot that you can do with him. We're going to figure out hopefully exactly how fast he is. A lot of people think he's a sub 4.4 guy. LSU's had a lot of sub 4.4 guys at wide receiver. He seems to match their speed, so we're going to assume that for now. But yeah, he is a fun dude to watch, and arguably you could definitely make a case for him being the top wide receiver in the class.
I've heard some Antonio Brown comps. Does that make sense to you, John?
A little bit. I wouldn't say – I don't know about Antonio because, you know, when he came out, he was a fifth-round pick, remember? You know, he wasn't the guy.
Well, yeah, I'm talking his NFL prime to something you might see out of Malik.
His ceiling.
Antonio was just another level.
Yeah.
Antonio was another level.
He was.
Back in his prime, and it was because of his change of direction ability. Like, he could stop and go on a dime. Like, he was nuts. 2 steps, and he's going a different direction, and you're just like, I don't even know what happened. I didn't even see it. You know, I'm not sure he's that. It's hard to
Okay.
put anybody up there with prime Antonio Brown, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so hard that in the position that we're in right now, it's yes, we want the left tackle to secure Will Levis's blind side for the next 10 years, but also with the talent that's at the wide receiver position, with the first 3 wide receivers, you got Harrison Jr., you got Nabers, and you got Odunze. It's like, man, if we get yes, it's not sexy, but it's the secure pick for our quarterback. But if we don't get on, we go wide receiver. Our head coach loves touchdowns. He's came out and said it. He's valued touchdowns over, offensive linemen because now he has his father. So it's a flip of a coin for us, really, Titans fans. It's a win-win in my eyes. If we go wide receiver with Nabers or Dunes or God forbid Marvin Harrison Jr. falls and we get that tackle in the second round because there's an elite ones out there, like you said. Both classes are very deep. But it's very hard to pass on 89 catches, damn near 1,600 yards and 14 touchdowns. An LSU prospect who these guys are, LSU is wide receiver U. It's starting to feel like the past couple of seasons, they're just piping out these guys. It's so hard to pass on him at 7 in my eyes too. If he's sitting there with Joe Alt, Rand Carthon's got a decision in his hands. Now, for you, I'm going to ask you, since we talked about Odunze, I know, but just to spice things up a little bit with the conversation. Now, for you, John, how would you rank these? I want to give you a 2-part question here, just like Vinny says sometimes. How would you rank those 3 wide receivers right there? And then just give me a sleeper in the second round that everyone's not talking about who's going to be a solid wide receiver in the NFL.
So, if we're talking wide receivers, I think personally, I haven't officially graded Nabers out yet. I'm waiting for the official stuff to come through. Is what I'm basically doing. I've got a lot of the evaluation's pretty much done. I think he's going to be damn near close to my number 1 wide receiver. I think that Odunze would be 2, and for me, and then this is a hot take. This is going to be blasted everywhere.
I'm with you. I'm with you too on it. I've came out.
Harrison's
and said the same
my
thing.
3. Harrison's my 3 in this group.
Now, is that because of the behavioral stuff that you've been seeing from him, or is it just strictly film?
No, it's strictly film. Now, the reason that he's not working out, that Harrison hasn't done these workouts and stuff, is because he's been told by teams, we don't need to see it. We're not worried about it. That's been the whole narrative since he's, declared has been, I'm not training to do all these, the BS combine drills. I'm training for football. I'm focused on football.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been the narrative around Harrison throughout the entire process up to this point. Now, he also doesn't have an agent. He's got a management team that's working with him, that's helping him make these decisions, including his dad, who notoriously hated the media and hated anything that was outside of football. So it makes sense. I think that teams have seen everything they need to see from him. They're not too worried about it. And I wouldn't be surprised if they've told Nabers the same thing. At this point, though, I think he's my 3 because I think he's a 2 at the next level. I don't think Harrison's a 1. So he's going to have to be a complimentary guy, and he lacks some physicality. So if you actually wanted to put, I felt the same way about Calvin Ridley when he came out, right? Where he's one of the most talented wide receivers I'd ever evaluated, but he's not a 1. He's a guy that needs that 1 on the outside to take that attention away and let him open his opportunities up underneath. And that's kind of where I see Harrison. I don't see him as a deep ball stretcher. I don't see him as a guy that's going to, make a lot of plays, that are tremendous. He's going to catch the passes he's supposed to. He's going to be really productive as long as he's got that number 1 somewhere. Nabers is in that same boat. Odunze is a 1. But, Nabers has that potential to be absolutely through the roof. So I think Nabers is going to end up grading as my 1. Odunze be 2. And then 3 would be Harrison. Now, to answer your other question there about a sleeper in the second that nobody's really talking about, for the Titans, I would love to see Malachi Corley come up there from Western Kentucky. Corley is fun. He's kind of that mix. He's in that Nabers boat where he can kind of work out of the slot, work outside. Everybody kind of called him and said, oh, well, he ran so many bubble screens. He went to the Senior Bowl and showed he could run a lot of other routes. But Corley is in any other wide receiver class, probably a first-round talent that drops into the day 2 because there's so many guys in this class. They call him Rack King, you know, and I talked to him at Senior Bowl. One of the things that he said to me was, "Oh, I can't be the king yet. I got to challenge Debo for that." And that's what I'm going to go do. So he's after Debo. He's a very similar player to Debo, you know, so I like Malachi. I think that you put him in the slot, you put him in your 2 slot. He's going to be awesome at the next level.
Vin?
Jared's really holding on to that Brian Callahan quote about scoring touchdowns. And I'll tell you what, if we bypass Rudolph, one of these receivers, it'll be Mason Rudolph throwing the ball at a certain point during the season, unfortunately. If we let go of all, I mean, we bypass all for one of these receivers. It'll be Mason, and then we'll see how happy Jarett is with Mason Rudolph playing quarterback.
I'm not just saying happy. I'm saying we can go either way.
I know. He said that, and then we paid Calvin Ridley $90 million, 50 of it guaranteed. So I think we did that with the intention of going tackle at 7. To play devil's advocate, though, if Malik Nabers is there at 7, do you see them pulling the trigger on that because DeAndre Hopkins might be gone next year, because we feel like we can get Guyton or Paul in the second round at the tackle position? Do you think it's more likely we take a guy like Nabers at 7 if he's there over O'Dunes at 7 if he's there?
Personally, no. I wouldn't take Nabers over O'Dunes if I'm, you know, the Titans sitting there at 7. If I take a wide receiver, I wouldn't do that either. Not at 7.
What if Marvin Harrison Jr. is there at 7? Just in the slim chance that he is.
I'd still take a tackle. I might shop around and see if anybody wants to move up and get him. You know,
yeah,
I might do
absolutely.
that. But no, I'm not taking him at 7 if I'm the Titans. And the reason I wouldn't take Nabers at 7 over Dunze, you know, if I'm going to go wide receiver, is because if I'm drafting to a wide receiver right there, it's to replace Hop. That's what I'm doing. I'm replacing D-Hop next year.
You have to think about that.
I need a 1. I don't think Nabers is a 1. I
always compared
and replace him.
I always compared O'Dunze. I always thought he had a D-Hop type skill. You know, he was a guy that he's always finds a way to get the football, and he attacks the football, and that's what I love.
Well, if you remember Alshon Jeffrey in his prime, he was the same way too. You know, they're all kind of in that same group, that same type of player.
Yeah, I'd like if we did get Rome, I'd hope his career panned out a little bit better than Alshon Jeffrey, but nevertheless,
Super Bowl.
What do you mean? Alshon made some money. Alshon won a Super Bowl.
Okay, was he a 7?
He had a career that a lot of people. He had a career a lot of people would like to have.
Did he have a 7th overall pick in the draft year? His career?
He wasn't picked 7th overall in the draft.
I know, but if we're going to compare Rome at 7 to Alshon Jeffrey,
we could pull up numbers and see how good of a career Alshon had. I think he did just fine, but that's neither here nor there. So you're saying, John, if we bypass a tackle for a receiver, you think it should be, if it's going to be anybody, it should be O'Dunes, because you think he'd be a potential number 1 and a replacement for D-Hop next year. That being said, I'm glad you agree with me that we should go tackle. I think we made the moves in free agency with the intention of taking a tackle at 7. You know, I think we might get a guy in the second round. You know, how do you feel about a guy like Xavier Leggett or Xavier Worthy? Do you think those could be potential fits for the Titans in the second round at 38?
Yeah, if they're there. That's kind of the question. We don't know who's going to go where after, you know, really the 15th pick. Yeah. It could be anybody. It's in the top 60. Yeah. Because the talent is not that different, you know. And Troy Franklin's in that mix too, right? You know, Franklin is a guy that a lot of people like. I tracked his route tree, and he had one of the most complex route trees that I'd seen. So, you know, out of anybody in college in the last few years.
Too.
Oh yes. That's another guy that's in that group.
I know about that guy too. I know about that guy.
There's a bunch. They're all in that same conglomerate group.
Listen, I stand corrected. Alshon Jeffrey had a fair career. He had 46 touchdowns, 67. He only broke 1,000 twice, but one-time Pro Bowler. I would hope that Rome has a better career than this, though, if we draft him at 7. That's all I'll say. But nevertheless,
I think he was a Pro Bowler with the Chicago Bears, was he not?
He was. His second year, he had 1,400 yards, man. That's impressive. So, listen, Alshon Jeffrey, definitely, he moved the needle.
And we don't got to tell you, John, you're an Eagles fan, a key cog on that Super Bowl team.
Oh, what a beautiful year that was. That was awesome.
And then he dropped the pass, and then he dropped the pass against the Saints the next year. So,
they have a Super Bowl. Something we don't. So that's it. He had 220 yards that Super Bowl year, 3 touchdowns. If Rome can do that in the playoffs for us.
The pick is just I think it's just.
I'll tell you what, all the money that AC has, maybe you can get Vin some fucking Wi-Fi connection. That's what he's. Come on, I couldn't help myself. Come on, Vin. No, I can't. You would have laid down the same line at that point too.
Probably much sooner than you would have too. So I think after what we dealt with, what we dealt with last year, the last 2 years of left tackle, we're fortunate that Joel could fall into our lap at 7. So sometimes the right answer is the easy one, and I don't think we messed this up.
No, I don't think you can mess it up. That's the great news. I've been echoing that. Oh, well, yeah, of course. Listen, we are the Titans. We do find a way to absolutely.
Hey, I live in Nashville. I see it. You know what I'm saying?
We don't have to
here, front row seat.
We don't have to relive the nightmares of offensive linemen and receivers and all that stuff. But we will see. We have faith in this regime beyond belief. And last night's occurrence, which we will go over in depth in a later show, really just put the bow on it. That this grouping really wants to bring this team into the 21st century. It's something that we have not done in our existence, really, honestly. And that goes.
We're already in the 21st century, though, T.
Okay, that was good. That was very good. Very good. You are more witty than me. I'll give you that, Ben. Listen, at the end of the day, this is our last little snippet that we're going to do covering our draft prospects. So I want to take this time to thank John for joining us, taking an hour and a half out of his time to go over some prospects that we're looking at. And that's why he's the best at what he does, and we're happy to have him on. So, John, thanks again for helping us out here. And I'm sure we'll have you on once we get our picks. And then you could tell us what a horrible job our no, I'm just kidding. But we'll see. I have a lot of faith that you're going to be happy as well with what we do, considering all the moves we made so far in the offseason. But thanks again very much, John, for joining us, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Hopefully you already subscribed. And, if you haven't, please feel free to hit the subscribe button, like, comment on all the shows that we've been putting out. We have all these draft spot prospects that we've covered. And I think they'll be dropping sporadically throughout the next couple weeks or whatnot. But anything else you guys want to throw out there before we wrap up for a whole segment, Jarett?
Tuesday's show is gonna be lit because we're gonna talk about the need for Sneed, baby.
That's it. Our secondary is serious now, man. It's serious.
Darius might be in the running for my first child whenever it comes, boy or girl. I don't really care.
Legarius Lombard. I'll tell you what.
That kind of flows a little bit.
It does flow. And you might
double L's like me.
You might confuse a few people during the scouting process. They might think some other things are happening.
All right. On that note, before we get canceled.
Nah, we can never get canceled. How can we get canceled? It's our own fucking show. You can't get canceled from your own show. That's not how this works. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a phenomenal rest of your week. We'll catch you on the flip. And as always, tighten up. Sammy, send us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Talking Titans on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.